From the Wild West to Washington, the never-ending cowboy movie. Once upon a time in the dusty saloons and lawless streets of the Wild West, justice was a luxury reserved for the rich. The wealthy landowner, perched atop his grand estate, had the sheriff, the judge, and the entire town in his pocket. His spoiled children, privileged, reckless, and above the law, could shoot a man at high noon, steal a farmer's land, or even burn down a rival's business, all without facing a single consequence. The poor, meanwhile, had two choices: obey and suffer, or rebel and be crushed. Fast forward to 2025, and America still operates under the same script. The cowboy hats have been replaced with tailored suits, the saloons have turned into boardrooms, and the landowners of old have been replaced by billionaires, corporate monopolies, and lobbyists who now own not just the local sheriff and judge, but the entire government. The movie never ended. It just got a modern remake. The sheriff and the judge, bought and paid for. In the Old West, lawmen served those who paid them the most. Today, the tradition lives on. In 2008, Wall Street's finest nearly crashed the global economy with reckless financial schemes, but instead of facing jail time, they were bailed out with taxpayer money. The executives of Lehman Brothers, Goldman Sachs, and AIG played the role of the lawless cowboy, while the U.S. government, playing the role of the obedient sheriff, ensured that they rode off into the sunset with golden parachutes. And who could forget the pharmaceutical outlaws? Purdue Pharma, responsible for the opioid crisis that killed hundreds of thousands, walked away with fines instead of prison sentences. Meanwhile, an ordinary American caught with an ounce of marijuana in the wrong state could find himself rotting in jail for years. Justice in America remains as blind as it was in the Wild West. Only now, she seems to have an exclusive contract with billionaires. The criminal offspring, then and now. Back in the cowboy days, the rich landowners' sons could terrorize the town, knowing that daddy's money would always keep them out of jail. Fast forward to modern America, and we have the likes of Hunter Biden, who can allegedly engage in dubious financial deals, evade taxes, and even wave guns around while on drugs, all without consequence. Meanwhile, an average citizen trying to protect his business from looters is thrown into legal hell. And let's not forget the corporate heirs. The Walton family, owners of Walmart, rake in billions while their underpaid employees rely on food stamps. Jeff Bezos watches his workers collapse from exhaustion in Amazon warehouses, but instead of improving working conditions, he builds rockets for a billionaire space race. Just like in the old westerns, the rich still take whatever they want, and the poor are left fighting over crumbs. Government for sale, the new age landowners. The rich landowner of the past might have bribed the sheriff and judge, but today's elite have refined the process. Lobbyists openly write the laws that Congress passes. Corporate giants like BlackRock and Vanguard own everything from food production to media outlets, ensuring that the narrative stays tightly controlled. Google, Facebook, and Twitter serve as modern-day hired guns, silencing dissent and controlling public discourse with the precision of a trained sniper. Even foreign policy follows the same old script. In the Wild West, if the rich landowner wanted more land, he'd send his goons to drive out the settlers. Today, if corporations want cheap oil or minerals, they lobby the government to invade sovereign nations under the guise of spreading democracy. Iraq, Libya, Syria, just a few examples of how the U.S. government, acting as the corporate enforcer, ensures that business remains profitable. Cowboys and Indians, then and now. Back in the Wild West, cowboys with superior firepower slaughtered Native Americans with impunity, claiming it was necessary for progress and security. The settlers, armed with rifles and backed by government-sanctioned military campaigns, wiped out entire villages while their newspapers justified the killings as civilizing the land. The victims, men, women, and children, were labeled as savages, their deaths dismissed as collateral damage in the pursuit of expansion. Fast forward to today, and the same story plays out in Gaza. Israel, armed with American-supplied fighter jets, drones, and precision bombs, regularly unleashes destruction on Palestinian civilians, killing women and children while claiming self-defense. Just as the U.S. government once painted Native Americans as dangerous obstacles to be removed, modern media outlets frame Palestinians as terrorists, justifying their slaughter. When an entire family is wiped out in an airstrike, it's written off as an unfortunate necessity, just as it was in the Wild West. And just like back then, the U.S. government and its corporate allies continue to fund and supply the massacre. After all, war is big business. Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and Boeing rake in billions while Palestinian homes are reduced to rubble. The settlers of the Wild West had their land grabs. Modern-day Israeli settlers have theirs. The tools may have changed, but the philosophy remains the same. Might makes right, and the victims are always blamed for their own extermination. Democrats versus Republicans, the grand illusion. And what about the so-called political divide that keeps Americans arguing at dinner tables, unfriending each other on social media, and treating politics like a football rivalry? In reality, Democrats and Republicans are nothing more than actors playing their roles in the longest-running show in history. The fight isn't about principles or policies. It's about which gang of elites gets to loot the treasury for the next 4 years. Both parties pretend to be enemies in front of the cameras, engaging in made-for-TV shouting matches about social issues to keep the public distracted. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, they toast champagne together at lavish donor events, writing laws that benefit the same corporate overlords. The 2008 financial crisis? Bailouts under both Bush and Obama. Endless wars? Bipartisan. The Patriot Act? Bipartisan. Government surveillance? Bipartisan. The transfer of wealth from the middle class to the billionaire class? Entirely bipartisan. The Wild West had rival outlaw gangs, but they all worked under the same unwritten rule: never let the common folk realize they're being robbed. Washington, D.C. has taken that same concept and perfected it. Every election cycle, Americans are told to pick a side, as if the choice between a donkey and an elephant will somehow change the fact that both serve the same masters. The never-ending movie. The America of 2025 is not so different from the lawless towns of the 1800s. The gunslingers have been replaced by hedge fund managers, the corrupt sheriffs by politicians, and the landowners by multinational corporations. The criminals at the top still enjoy absolute immunity, while the common folk are left to suffer under laws designed to keep them in their place. The only difference? Back in the cowboy days, people knew they were being robbed. Today, they still believe they live in the land of the free. The Wild West never died, it just got Wi-Fi.